The first thing you need to understand is this. I didn't go looking for a fight. I didn't wake up one day wanting to take on a neighborhood tyrant or expose corruption or become some kind of accidental crusader. All I wanted was peace, quiet, and a cold beer on a wooden porch that my grandfather built with his own hands. That's it, that was the dream, and for a while, it was perfect. My name is Ethan Cole, I'm 54 years old, and after 3 decades of crawling through attics, trenches, and electrical rooms keeping half of Mason County lit up, I finally retired and came back to the one place that ever really felt like home, a weathered little cabin on Hollow Ridge Lake that my granddad bought in 1961 for $900 and a handshake. $900, like a front, try saying that out loud without laughing. The place isn't fancy, it never was, hand-cut logs, a stone chimney that leans just a little to the left, screen door that sings when the wind hits it right, but every inch of that cabin carries a memory. Fishing lines tangled on the dock with my brother, muddy boots kicked off by the door, my granddad's old radio crackling baseball games late into the night. I kept it off-grid by choice, solar panels humming on the roof, well water cold and clean, a septic system older than most of the people trying to tell me how to live, and every morning when the mist rolls in off the lake, it is this moment, right before the loons start calling, where everything feels exactly the way it's supposed to. Or at least, it did, before Lydia Rowe showed up. Now Lydia. Lydia wasn't from around here, you could tell the second she stepped out of that pearl white SUV like she was walking onto a stage, perfect hair, perfect jacket, heels that didn't belong anywhere near gravel, and that smile, tight, polished, practiced, the kind that never quite reaches the eyes. She became president of the Silver Pines Homeowners Association within 3 months of moving in, 3 months, in a community where some folks had lived their entire adult lives without ever caring who held the clipboard. But Lydia cared, oh she cared, about rules, about appearances, about control. She wore that HOA badge like a serif star and she made sure everyone saw it. At first it was little things, new guidelines about mailbox colors, trash can placement, dock aesthetics, harmless on the surface, annoying, sure, but nothing that felt dangerous, just another bored retiree looking for purpose. He figured she'd burn out. He was wrong. The first time she came onto my property, it was 7 in the morning. He was sitting on the porch with a mug of coffee, watching 2 loons teach their chicks how to dive, and I hear these sharp clicking sounds coming down my dock, click click click, heels, actual heels, on weathered wood. I look up and there she is, marching like she's late for court, phone in one hand, clipboard in the other, not a flicker of hesitation about being on private land. She didn't say good morning. She didn't say hello. She just taped a bright yellow notice to my screen door and said, "You'll want to take care of this immediately." I picked it up and read it twice. Violation, unsightly dock structure negatively impacting community property values, fine, $500, 72 hours to comply. My dock, the same dock my granddad and I rebuilt after a storm when I was 12, the same dock every kid on the lake learned to swim off of, was apparently an eyesore. He walked over, polite, calm, and said, "Ma'am, this property predates the HOA by nearly 40 years." She looked me up and down, slow, deliberate, like she was measuring my worth, and said, "Everyone on this lake answers to me, Mr. Cole, do they be wise to understand that?" Not loud, not angry, used, cold. That was the first chill in my gut. Within a week, I had 3 more notices, solar panels, garden layout, porch railings, things that had never been a problem in 60 years suddenly became urgent violations. She'd circle my cabin taking photos like a real estate appraiser, snapping shots of my windows, my yard, even the old carved posts my granddad made, and every time she'd smile, that same tight smile, like she was enjoying it. Neighbors started acting strange, folks who used to wave now looked away, conversations cut short when I walked up. I didn't know it yet, but she was already working them, whispering, warning, threatening, setting the board. Then the letter came. Certified mail, thick envelope, expensive letterhead. Carter, Willoughby and Gray, one of those firms where the lobby probably smells like money. Cease and desist, illegal encroachment into community waterway, $3,000 in retroactive fees, lien threatened if unpaid. I remember sitting at my kitchen table staring at that paper while my coffee went cold, feeling something heavy settle in my chest, because suddenly it wasn't just a neighbor with a clipboard, it was lawyers, it was money, it was power. My first instinct was panic. I'm a tradesman, not a legal wizard. I fix wires, not lawsuits, but then I heard my granddad's voice in my head like he was sitting right there with me. When someone tries to scare you off your land, son, go read the papers, the truth's always in the papers. So I went to the county records office, that dusty little building where town forgot to move, and pulled the original deed. And there it was, plain as day, my property line didn't stop at the shoreline, it extended 40 feet into the lake. That dock wasn't on community land, it was on mine. And the HOA, the mighty HOA, wasn't they even formed until 1999. I stood there holding those copies, feeling this rush of relief and anger all tangled together, relief that I wasn't they crazy, anger that they tried to bluff me. He drove back to the cabin feeling 10 feet tall, ready to shut this down. And that's when I found her SUV parked sideways across my driveway. Blocking it, completely. Not beside it, not near it, across it, like a barricade. I walked up and knocked on her window, she rolled it down an inch and said, "I'm reviewing parking compliance, this may take a while." I just stood there, a grown man, a veteran electrician, being held hostage in my own driveway by a woman with a laminated badge and a power fantasy. That's when it hit me, this wasn't about docks, or solar panels, or railings. This was about control. And Lydia Rowe had decided. It was her project. It didn't they know it yet, but that moment, standing in my gravel drive with her engine idling in my ears, was the beginning of the longest, ugliest 6 months of my life. And she was just getting warmed up. After that driveway stunt, things shifted, not loudly, not all at once, but in that slow, creeping way that makes you question your own sanity, like maybe you're overreacting, maybe you're imagining patterns that aren't there. That's how people like Lydia win, they make you doubt yourself. At first, it was the whispers. They walked down the road in the evenings like I always had, hands in my pockets, nodding at neighbors, and suddenly folks were busy checking their phones or crossing the street, conversations would stop when I got close, doors would close a little quicker than usual. One night, my neighbor Tom, who they shared beers with for 15 years, caught me by the mailbox and said quietly, "Man. I just wanna say. I'm sorry." He laughed and said, "For what, you steal my lawnmower?" Didn't they smile? He leaned in and said, "She told us if we didn't they file complaints about your place, they start looking real close at ours." That was the first time I realized, this wasn't they personal anymore, this was strategic. Lydia wasn't they just targeting me, she was building pressure, squeezing the whole block until someone cracked. And then the inspection started. Building inspector showed up one morning, clipboard in hand, apologetic look on his face. "Got a report about unpermitted structures," he said. He spent 2 hours crawling through my place, measuring, checking, muttering, finally sighed and said, "Everything's solid, isn't, better than most new builds." Next day, environmental services, septic contamination complaint, clean. Day after, fire marshal, solar panel hazard, clear. Each visit was polite, professional, but each one left a little scar, another file, another line on some report that said my address had been investigated. That's when I started to understand, this wasn't about violations, it was about creating a record. She was manufacturing a reputation. And then she went public. Local news ran a little community segment, smiling Lydia in her blazer talking about preserving property values and protecting families from unsafe conditions, carefully angled photos of my cabin that made it look like a hunting shack in a horror movie. She stood on my dock while doing it, my dock, smiling into the camera like she owned the place. That night my phone lit up, texts, messages, comments, some confused, some angry, some straight up hostile. "Didn't know you were that kind of guy. You need to clean your place up. People like you ruin communities." He sat there on my porch with a beer I didn't even taste, listening to the loons, watching the sun drop behind the trees, feeling like he'd been put on trial without ever stepping into a courtroom. And then, the spray paint. He came out one morning and there it was across my mailbox in thick orange letters. "Compris or leave." Not subtle, not random, deliberate. He checked my camera, caught her SUV passing at 2:30 in the morning. When I called it in, a deputy showed up, took a look, shrugged. "Probably kids." It was her nephew. That's when something inside me hardened. He wasn't this scared anymore. He was focused. Because bullies only escalate when they think you're weak, and Lydia had just told me exactly who she was. That same week, my old buddy Rick, a lawyer I went to high school with, stopped by. We were sitting at the kitchen table, beer sweating onto the wood, and I was venting, inspections, letters, threats, all of it. He didn't interrupt, just listened, and then he said, "You know the Attorney General's office has been quietly looking into HOA abuse cases, right?" He blinked. "Abuse?" He nodded. "Harassment, forced sales, financial irregularities, same pattern popping up in different counties." That word, pattern, hit me like a bell. He leaned back and said, "Elderly homeowners get hit with fines, pressured, scared, sell cheap, developers buy in, property values jump, somebody gets rich." I thought about the Hendersons, the couple down the road who sold last month after living there 20 years, about Mrs. Keaton who moved in with her daughter, about how Lydia always seemed to know who was vulnerable. My stomach tightened. Rick looked at me and said, if what you're dealing with fits that mold, you might not be her target, you might be her obstacle. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there listening to the lake lap against the shore, replaying every interaction, every look, every comment, and it clicked. She didn't want my dock. She wanted my land. The next morning, I went back to the county office, and this time, I asked about HOA financials. The clerk, an older woman named Sharon who remembered my granddad, raised an eyebrow and said, "What exactly are you looking for, honey?" He said, "Everything." And that's when the story changed. Emergency assessments, tens of thousands, landscaping contracts to companies they never heard of, storm damage claims on days when the weather was clear, a property management firm with a P.O. box address. I started connecting dots like a crazy person, writing names, dates, amounts. One of the landscaping companies, Row Grounds and Maintenance, registered 3 weeks after Lydia became HOA president. Her brother-in-law was listed as the owner. He sat there staring at the screen feeling my pulse in my ears. This wasn't just harassment. This was a business model. I called Rick and said, "I think she's stealing." He paused and said, "I think you're right." That's when the tone of everything shifted, from defense, to investigation. But Lydia didn't know that. She thought she was winning. She doubled down. Facebook posts about aggressive behavior from a resident, warnings to protect your children, comments from accounts with no photos, no history, all praising her, all attacking me. Then she filed for a restraining order. He got served while I was grilling. The paperwork painted me as unstable, threatening, dangerous. Complete fiction. The judge dismissed it in minutes, but the damage was done. My name was now tied to threats in a public record. That night, I sat on the porch staring out at the dark water, feeling tired in a way sleep don't fix, wondering if it was worth it, if I should just sell and leave and be done. And then my neighbor Carol showed up with a pa. Didn't say much, just hugged me, hard, and said, "We know who you are, Ethan, don't let her make you forget." That cracked something open in me. Support started coming from places I didn't expect. The VFW, the Historical Society, even the local electricians union posted about my work and integrity. And Lydia noticed. That's when the sabotage started. My solar system went down, twice. Jake, my electrician buddy, found loosened connections, deliberate. We put up a hidden camera. 2 nights later, there she was, hoodie, gloves, crouched by my panel with a screwdriver. Clear as day. Then my boat drifted across the lake, chains cut. Then my septic backed up, chemical smell so strong it burned my eyes. The tech said, "Someone poured industrial cleaner down here, this isn't an accident." $3,000 repair. He stood in my yard holding that invoice, looking at the lake, and I swear. He could feel my granddad watching, waiting. That was the moment I stopped asking why, and started asking how far. Because Lydia wasn't just mean, she was desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. Rick connected me with a contact at the AX office, a woman named Dana Morales, sharp, quiet, all business. She came out, sat at my table, looked through my folders, my photos, my logs, didn't interrupt. When she finally spoke, she said, "Amy, recall, this goes beyond HOA misconduct, this is organized fraud." Then she said something that made my skin prickle. We've been tracking similar cases in 4 other counties. 4. This wasn't a local. It was a network. That's when they looped in federal investigators. Quietly, carefully. And that's when Lydia started unraveling. Her calls got more aggressive, her posts more frantic, her tone sharper, like someone who feels the walls closing in but don't know where the exits are. She called me one afternoon, private number. He answered. She said, "You're making a very big mistake, Ethan." He smiled and said, "So are you." She hung up. And in that moment, he knew, whatever game she was playing, we were no longer on her board. She was on ours. And she had no idea what was coming. By the time the meeting with the Attorney General was scheduled, the cabin didn't feel like a cabin anymore, it felt like a stage, wires hidden, cameras tucked into corners, microphones disguised as smoke detectors, federal agents in unmarked trucks parked down the road pretending to fish. And me. He was just the guy making coffee, trying not to think about how insane my life had become. Dana called the night before and said, "She's going to come, Ethan, people like her can't stand losing control." He didn't doubt it. Lydia didn't do quiet exits, she did entrances. That morning, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the grain in the wood, the same table my granddad used to clean fish on, and I felt this strange mix of calm and sadness, calm because I knew the truth was about to surface, sadness because no matter how this ended, something about the innocence of this place was already gone. The Attorney General arrived right on time. Patricia Hale, mid-50s, practical jacket, kind as that missed nothing. She shook my hand and said, "Thank you for standing your ground, me recall, most people don't." We were 10 minutes into reviewing documents when I heard it. The engine. Eek rape, fast approach, gravel spraying. I looked at Dana, she didn't even blink, just touched her earpiece. "So dime," she said quietly. The SUV door slammed, heels hit the porch like gunshots. Lydia's voice was already rising, rehearsed and righteous, projecting for her phone. "This is it, everyone, we are about to expose corruption at the highest level." Then the door exploded inward. Not opened, not pushed, kicked. Wood splintered across the floor, glass shattered, my granddad's old coat hook ripped clean off the wall. She stormed in with her phone held high, eyes wild, breathing hard, performing. "I demand to know why the state is secretly meeting with this man," she shouted, spinning to capture the room. "This is government persecution, this is political retaliation, this is illegal." She froze. Because Patricia Hale stood up. Slowly, calmly, reached into her jacket, and held up her badge. "Lydia Rowe," she said, level and steady, "I am the Attorney General of this state, and you have just committed multiple felonies in my presence." The color drained from Lydia's face in real time. You could see it, the moment her brain caught up with her mouth. Her phone was still streaming, thousands of people watching, comments exploding, confusion, panique, disbelief. Dana stepped out from behind the hallway door, 2 federal agents right behind her. "Ma'am," one of them said, "put the phone down." She didn't. She just kept shaking her head, whispering, "No, no, no, this is wrong, this is wrong." When the cuffs went on, the room went silent. Not dramatic, not loud, just heavy. Like the air had finally dropped. Her phone hit the floor, screen still glowing, still broadcasting her collapse to the world. On the porch, neighbors had gathered, some crying, some staring, some holding each other like they survived the storm. Carol was there, pie still in her hands, shaking. Tom was there, eyes wet. Even Mrs. Keaton, who'd moved out months earlier, stood at the end of the drive with her daughter, watching the woman who they chased her from her home get led away in handcuffs. As Lydia passed me, she hissed, "This isn't over." He leaned in and said quietly, "It is for you." The SUV was towed as evidence. The cameras shut off. And for the first time in months, the lake was quiet. The fallout was fast, and brutal. The financial records opened up like a wound, shell companies, fake invoices, insurance fraud, money funneled through relatives, properties flipped under pressure. Her husband resigned within a week, indicted a month later. The HOA dissolved under state order. Homeowners were reimbursed, some fully, some partially, all of them stunned. Familias came back. The Hendersons bought a place 2 lots down. MRS, Keaton moved home. People started waving again, really waving, not the fake kind. We formed a volunteer association, no fees, no power, just neighbors. And slowly, piece by piece, the soul came back. I used part of the settlement money to set up a small scholarship fund in my granddad's name for kids going into trades, because he always said honest hands build honest lives. The dock got fixed, the real way, not the HOA way. The solar panels hum again. The mailbox is clean. So many nights I sit on the porch and listen to the loons and think about how close I came to walking away, to letting her win, and it still chills me. Because it is the thing. Lydia wasn't special. She wasn't a mastermind. She was just someone who learned that power works if nobody pushes back. And most people don't, because it's exhausting, because it's scary, because it costs. But if you're watching this and you're dealing with someone like her, someone who uses rules like weapons, someone who smiles while they squeeze. I want you to hear me. You are not crazy. You are not alone. And you are not wrong for standing your ground. Sometimes the quiet guy on the porch, the one who just wants peace, ends up being the one who changes everything. Not because he's brave, but because he's tired of being bullied. So now I'm curious, and I mean this genuinely. Where do you stand on this? Was I right to fight, or should I have walked away? Was Lydia a criminal, or just a woman drunk on power? And if this had been your home, your land, your memories, what would you have done? Drop it in the comments. Read them, all of them. And if you've got your own HOA nightmare, share it, because these stories matter, and the more light we shine, the less room they have to hide. If this story hit you, hit the like button, it helps more than you think. Subscribe if you want more real stories about ordinary people standing up to broken systems. And remember, sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do to a bully is refuse to move.